Alright, so the Eagles got flat out embarrassed in all three phases against Tampa Bay, leading to the Fire Sirianni movement taking flight. But just how bad is it really? On the other side, let's take a look at the silver lining to come from all this, and go over a final update on Haason Reddick's chances of returning to Philly, since there's speculation Howie Roseman called to make a move. Also, with the defense playing so poorly, it's time Vic Fangio made several changes. And the good news is, it looks like the defense could be getting some much-needed help. However, what's happening off the field might be worse. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts continues to struggle with turnovers, leaving some to question if we're watching Carson Wentz 2.0. So let's talk about that and how this team can get back on track, even with all the concerns. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? Okay, I'm getting this one up a little bit late because apparently the Eagles played so bad that it got my girl sick, but nonetheless, here we go, and let's at least get into the game. I mean, I thought after a tremendous performance against the New Orleans Saints, especially from the defense, that they'd show up with that same level of intensity on Sunday. Heck, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter even talked earlier in the week about how it's going to be a 1-0 mentality from here on out. Except, well, I don't know what we witnessed in Tampa Bay, as the temps in the mid-90s, along with the humidity and real feel close to 110, quite literally cooked the birds before the game even started.
So damn hot. Milk was a bad choice.
I should have known whenever Brandon Perna spun that godforsaken curse wheel and it landed on the Eagles that we were doomed from the start.
Don't you put that evil on me! Don't you put that on us!
Who am I kidding? The Eagles look like an average mistake-prone team right now, and like we saw, it doesn't matter who you are, if you're not mentally and physically prepared, that's what happens in the NFL. And I don't know if it was the Broncos tape from the game before or believing Tampa just wasn't good enough to put up a fight, but either way, Philly wasn't ready to go, and that starts with one guy.
The product that's on the field is a direct reflection of me.
Alright, well then if that's the case, the answer is pretty dang obvious. Now sure, you can't discount the fact that the Birds entered the game in Tampa, down A.J. Brown, down Devontae Smith, and down Lane Johnson, which certainly plays a factor, but it's also inexcusable to see their level of play. Like here you have a coach that preaches discipline, fundamentals, taking away the big play, and not turning the ball over, yet the team's not doing any of that.
Oh no! We suck again!
Yeah, because the Eagles missed 18 tackles against the Bucs while letting the Pirates pillage and essentially take whatever they wanted. And then add on top of that the fact that the turnover issues seem to plague them again, and we have a real problem. Seriously, shout out to Ruben Frank for the insights, but with the Birds ending -2 in turnovers versus the Bucs, they've now gone a ridiculous 12 straight games without winning a giveaway takeaway battle. By the way, they're -15 in the last 12 games, with the only takeaways being 2 Reed Blankenship interceptions this season. Obviously, everyone understands how bad that sounds, and yeah, having watched it, it was even worse on the field. So sorry, but it's not hyperbole when I say Sirianni is literally costing the Eagles games.
The Birds lose, I lose a fortune to Randy. What the did you do?
I've had it, because for real, if he's not calling plays, or at least mostly not calling plays, and he's supposed to be the cheerleader, the hype man, to get these guys ready to play, and that's not happening, then what the heck is he here for?
What would you say you do here?
We didn't coach well enough, we didn't play well enough, and that's always going to start with me. If we go out there and lay an egg and we're down 24-0, that's going to start on me. I didn't have the guys ready to start.
No, you think? It was literally a complete breakdown in every phase of the game. And there's really no other way to put it, but they flat out got embarrassed, as the Bucs took the opening drive 10 plays for 79 yards in a little over 5 minutes, resulting in a score to go up 7-0. By the way, out of those 10 plays, only one of them was a run. Granted, it was a really good one for 17 yards, but the Bucs had a terrific game plan to start, as Baker Mayfield averaged 1.95 seconds to throw, which was the quickest time to throw by a QB in any NFL game this season. Now sure, the Eagles' pass rush was non-existent, so it probably wouldn't have mattered, with both Bryce Huff and Jordan Davis winning exactly 0% of their pass rush attempts against one of the worst statistical offensive lines in the NFL through 3 weeks. Still, ultimately, it's on everyone though. I mean, yeah, at least Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat were eventually able to come up with some sacks, but the whole thing feels disjointed. And don't lie, it's incredibly reminiscent of last year. Like, think back to the 49ers game when Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy carved up the Eagles' defense with quick passes and forcing the defense to make tackles, and they gave nearly every side the blueprint to use against the Birds. And here's the worst part. Unfortunately, it looked like much of the same on Sunday, as it continued to be quick passes to test the defense's fundamentals, only to find that the message from Sirianni wasn't hitting home.
Mental is a part of the word. I have underlined it. Because you're mental, if you don't have a good time, you have to enjoy it.
Now, rest assured that Sirianni did say they'll be taking care of the fundamentals during the bye week, so, this probably puts all of our minds at ease hearing that. On a serious note, the worst part is that once it breaks down from the get-go, it just opens you up to get taken advantage of for bigger plays. For example, like the second touchdown score from Baker Mayfield to Trey Palmer, where RG3 did a great breakdown showing how the Bucs knew the weakness. So all they had to do was set up Nakobe with a fake in order to create enough of a hesitation and window to fit in the ball behind him. And yeah, Slay was also there in coverage, plus Dean, like I mentioned, but we'll get to him a little bit later. However, getting back into the flow of the game, there was none. Since the home side kept up all the momentum to get a 24-0 lead behind a 255-yard advantage. Sorry, I know the injuries matter, but who envisioned this offense having 0 yards of offense with only 6 minutes to play in the first half?
Is this a dream? No. I thought not.
The reality is this is still a Sirianni offense, or a quasi-Sirianni offense with some motion involved. Of course, I'm not going to absolve Kellen Moore from all blame. Yet it is a fair point when you start games that part is very much scripted. And I think we all realize the Eagles head coach has the temptation to get too involved in game prep, which has led to 4 straight opening possessions, only netting 7 total yards with 3 punts and 1 interception. Oh, but trust me whenever I say this is a Sirianni problem. Because believe it or not, the last time the Eagles scored a touchdown in the first quarter was when Julio Jones caught a pass back in Week 17 against the Cardinals. Also, FYI, credit to Anthony DeBona, but over the last 6 years, there's only been one team to not score a touchdown in the first quarter through the first 4 weeks and still make the playoffs. So, you think about that, combined with really questionable situational play calls the past few weeks, and I don't think I can take these explanations anymore on why your best player wasn't involved earlier in the game.
I think if you see the flow of the game, you understand why that happened. But, I mean, obviously we want him to get the touches of the ball, but when you don't sustain drives, then you're not going to be able to.
Exactly. Plus, all of the 3 and outs in the first half involved a first play of an incomplete pass. So, I don't know, maybe run the ball with your best player for once. Look, I'm okay with the very first possession not being a run to Saquon to try and catch the defense off guard. But when your best player is Saquon and you're without 2 wide receiver ones, there's no need to overthink it. You're right, though. That's just too hard to ask in that situation. However, it's not unbelievable to think Sirianni will be coaching for his job coming out of the bye week.
Look, they've lost 10 out of the last 13 games. So when you sit there and say, well, they're one of the best teams in the league, I don't know, being 3-10, that's kind of a stretch if you look at what's happened recently. But they do have a lot of good players, and they have a good team. I'm not saying they're not a good team. I'm just saying they haven't done very well lately. So maybe this bye week's a good time for them to reset.
Obviously, some of the thought is that could be your future Philly head coach, but Belichick's got a great point. I mean, over the last 11 games, even the Birds are 3-8 with a negative 92-point differential. Now, I'm not saying it will get him fired, but come on. Head coaches have been fired for a lot less in terms of underperforming over an 11-game stretch.
If you were waiting for the opportune moment, that was it.
Ultimately, it comes down to one thing. Does Sirianni still have the locker room? If the player's behind him, then he's okay. But if we start seeing any division at all, then he's likely gone. Of course, per usual, the overanalyzing Jalen Hurts quotes about how he and Sirianni will approach the bye week led to some questioning of their relationship.
You two talk about maybe, what you want the message to be to the team or how you kind of want to handle, as you guys go into the second part of the year.
We have our moments.
All right, that is a little bit awkward, but moving on, in a positive light, the bye week could not come at a better time. Like I know whenever it first came out, I was totally against it, as were several others, but this actually could be the thing that saves the Eagles season. Granted, yeah, there's a million things they need to clean up. But if you want a silver lining, we still haven't really gotten to see what this offense might look like with all the stars on the field at the same time. Technically, yes, Brazil was with the full offense, but an opener with a brand new offensive coordinator in a new country on a stupid excuse for a football field doesn't even feel like it should count. So I will say, let's maybe pump the brakes on any of the offense is going to be trash just like last year takes. Especially again with AJ, Smitty, and Lane coming back soon. Plus a bit more optimism, the Philly schedule gets a lot easier coming out of the bye. With the next 9 opponents after the bye featuring only one team with a winning record and the one who you would for sure have expected, the Commanders. However, despite the fact that some may have doubted the Washington football team to start the season, I did try to make the case that they could surprise some people. At the same time, let's not go overboard because their beginning schedule hasn't been too difficult. But that hasn't stopped the Vegas odds to drastically shift with them being the second favorite to win the division. Anyway, that's the good news for the Eagles, but I am curious. If you had to pick one thing, I know it's very difficult, but try really hard here. One thing, one optimistic part about the Eagles going into the bye, coming out of the bye, what would you say? Let me know in the comments. Now, while you're doing that, it's time to bring up Jalen Hurts. Because the personnel doesn't get a free pass either. Man, say what you will about QB1, but he's got to be better. Yet we've been saying that for multiple weeks at this point. With Jimmy Kempski handing out the Object Permanence Award to Jalen Hurts. AKA still needing to understand that items and people still exist even when you can't see or hear them. As Jimmy brought up the reminders of Carson Wentz. Look, I know we all remember how it seemed like Wentz started to lose total awareness in the pocket and the internal clock. And sadly, as much of a believer as I am in Jalen, he's held onto the ball too long. By the way, that's not a blanket statement, and even Sirianni admitted the turnovers are on the team as a whole, but if we're being realistic, it's like he's trying to do too much. And maybe more importantly, considering this roster with this talent, he doesn't have to force things like he is. Of course, I also hear those of you pointing out Patrick Mahomes' turnovers, which he does have more interceptions than Jalen to this point, yet he's also got the credit of multiple Super Bowls and having turned around a few brief slumps in his career. Plus, not that he didn't have them before, but as soon as Jalen got the big contract last year, that immediately had people waiting for him to fail. With a few national pundits quick to quip that the Eagles are paying their QB1 $51 million per year to not be a difference maker. Again, whether you believe that or not, Jalen just has to be a good quarterback for the Eagles to win. He doesn't even have to be really elite. But I hear you, organizations make bad bets on QBs all the time. But we're not in a Trevor Lawrence situation, for example. I mean, the dude is tied for the second highest yearly salary and hasn't won a game in over 310 days. And then say what you will about Sirianni, but there's a reason the players typically have his back.
Is there any chance you take the headset over just to change this thing up?
For what? I thought he called a great game. We as coaches, we can't go out there and make the plays, right? It's a two-way street.
Yeah, talk about days being numbered, but that is absolutely Doug right now. Still, there's a little bit of truth to what he's saying. But on the other hand, when you look at the Commanders' start and how well Jaden Daniels has been playing, I think it just further confirms just how constrained Brian Johnson was as an offensive coordinator within Sirianni's offense. Reminder, BJ is the Commanders' passing game coordinator now, and I'd say it's looked pretty stellar up to this point. Anyway, here's the bigger concern. Remember, the Eagles had interviewed Cliff Kingsbury for the OC job, but then ultimately passed, with rumors that Kingsbury wanted too much control. Now, maybe they just like Kellen Moore better, which, by the way, I'm not punting on that hire this early on. But I am wondering how much autonomy Kellen gets behind the scenes, even though we've been told other things publicly. Again, it's a different offense, but you can still see a lot of Sirianni's fingerprints mixed in with some motions. Although either way, even if that argument works with Kellen, it doesn't work for Vic Fangio, with the godfather of the defensive scheme allowing the bend but don't break as the dink and dunk has been killing the birds.
If history's taught us anything, it says you can kill anyone.
Yeah, if they're going to sit back and allow everything over the middle like we saw last season as well, it is absolutely going to kill them. I mean, like I said, the only thing that really saved the defense on Sunday momentarily were drops and miscues from the Bucs, like the dropped touchdown pass that still left Slay flexing incomplete afterward. And then after the game, despite poor play all around, Slay posted a tweet saying if you're going to talk bad about him, to not forget about his greatness as well. Now, I should mention that he deleted that tweet. But come on, bro, that ain't a good look from a team captain. Also, I get that Slay's a jokester and has social presence, but especially coming away from a loss like that in Tampa, I'm not the biggest fan of chopping it up with the enemy during the season. Slay went on Micah Parsons' podcast to say CJ is one of the vocal leaders we need. However, when he doesn't back up his play like he's talking, then he's going to hear about it. Look, I don't know how you guys feel, but that act just rubs me the wrong way, especially given the optics of how that thing appears. Of course, that wasn't the only action on social media, though, as Devin White retweeted a post mid-game about Levante David's forced fumble on Jalen Hurts. By the way, just in case you didn't hear, White claimed he only meant to heart the post since Levante's his twin for life. Yet the fact that it takes 2 steps to retweet asking you to verify makes it questionable. At the same time, I'm sure we've all made some pretty honest mistakes. However, the NFL wasn't buying it, as they had a member reach out to Devin White clearly thinking he was on drugs, requesting that he find the testing facility at the stadium to complete the test. Problem with that, though, the Eagles didn't activate him again, so dude wasn't even at the game. I mean, it's a complete joke with what Philly's doing with White, even though, yes, I totally disagree with how he's handling this frustration, I kind of understand it. And let's be real, the fact that White hasn't even been active through 4 weeks is really all you need to know. Sure, I guess there's a slight chance that Fangio watches the tape and decides to give White a shot after seeing Nakobe's play, as Dean missed a team-high 5 tackles and continues to be a liability in coverage. But ultimately, it might be time to try and move White, especially with Carolina's starting linebacker Shaq Thompson suffering a torn Achilles on Sunday in the loss to the Bengals. Be that as it may, Philly's not going to get a lot for White, but seriously, I mean, at this point, anything at all would still be a win. Which is the exact same thing I'll say for Bryce Huff, who, by the way, also did some strange stuff on social media by deleting all of his posts on Instagram that featured anything pertaining to the Eagles, while also limiting commenting on his existing posts. So, just like his pass rushing stats, his Eagles plays are nowhere to be found. Although, if you're on Baldy's side, it's more so the blunder with Philly not using him the right way.
In a 4-point stance, he's a sprinter. His nickname is the Bugatti. He has a great takeoff. That's what he does. That's how the Jets played him. In a 4-point stance with great takeoff. Now, you watch him here. Now he's a linebacker. Now he's in a 2-point stance, standing up. He hadn't beaten anybody. He's playing linebacker. He's trying to see too much right here. And backup tackles like Justin School can block him. All right? This is not how Bryce Huff got 10 sacks. You watch him, and here he is against Miami. 4-point stance. Almost, I think all 10 of his sacks last year came out of this look right here. Cross chop, beats the tackle. Sprinter, gets to Tua. Down goes Tua. You watch him on Sunday, and here he is. He is over here against a great player in Tristan Wirfs. Like 2-point stance, no takeoff, and he's just getting controlled. Play after play after play. He's got no stats, nothing. But here, in a 4-point stance, the way he's used to playing in pass rush situation, right here. Man, change of direction, the whole thing. This isn't who he is. You watch him right now against Tampa, like he's going up against a backup tackle. He can't beat him. He doesn't have a takeoff. He's in a 2-point stance. They're dropping him into coverage. He's on the ground. That's not good. You can't win on the ground. You watch him against a tight end right here, 2-point stance. Like this is not like he's getting beat by a tight end. You want to get the best out of Bryce Huff, put him in a 4-point stance and let him do nothing but chase the quarterback. But you put him in that position right now, that's not how he got to 10 sacks last year. That's not how he got a big fat contract.
Those are definitely fair points, but then you have to ask yourself, did Fangio and Howie whiff that badly on a guy based on projections? Look, I know it happens, and it wouldn't be the first time. And heck, it's early, but you might be able to throw in Jahan Dotson to that list. A shout out to Bo Wolf, but Jahan Dotson now ranks as the second to last wide receiver in terms of yards per route run in their team's first 4 games in the last 10 years. And here I thought we had fleeced the Commanders on that trade. Now sure, Dotson just isn't being targeted that much too, so it'd be nice to see what kind of difference he could make if Jalen looked his way more frequently. Yet either way, those numbers speak for themselves. Again, just like Bryce Huff's. Which, by the way, on that topic, I know there's been a lot of speculation and rumors for Haason Reddick's return, as he and Rappaport shared that per NFL rules, a move back to Philly is impossible, since teams are apparently not allowed to trade a player and then reacquire him via trade until 2 years has elapsed. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't have the faintest clue that rule even existed. However, the conspiracy theorists out there seem to think it's a sign that Howie checked in on a trade. But that would also mean the Eagles GM didn't know the rules, so it's hard to imagine that's actually the case. I don't know, at this point, I would say we're on a crash course headed for the trade deadline and a Howie Roseman splash right before then, which, by the way, is November 5th for those wondering. I mean, give him some credit that he at least doesn't just sit on his hands, even if he's had a few trades and moves that have not worked out recently. Now, personally, I'd probably still look at the potential of Jadeveon Clowney move or someone like that, but what about you guys? Who'd be your favorite choice? At least they've got time over the bye to figure things out, and man, it is in absolutely all 3 phases. Now, for the record, Fangio did admit the issues with the soft coverage while saying the players didn't respond quickly enough to playing tighter, but they'll coach it up and have that fixed. So I don't know if you believe that, but boy, it was atrocious on Sunday. And then the other change we could see is within the personnel space, as Sidney Brown continues to progress with his rehab and sounds like he's ready to go soon.
I think he's a good football player that brings energy. I think he's a good tackler. I'm excited to see him, for the first time, because I do think he's a good football player. Where he'll exactly fit in, we'll have to see. I think so, that we're going to open up his practice window. Now, I'm not positive of that, so don't hold me to that. But that has been the timeline, over the last few months, and haven't been told anything to the different.
Will you look at him in the slot at all?
It's possible. It's possible. But I think, a guy coming back from that long a layoff, it's best to get him in one spot before you start moving him around.
It goes without saying that Sid isn't the magic answer to solving the entire defense, but if he can find the right role, then maybe he can add a much-needed jolt. And perhaps even better to that is that Vic Fangio said that Cooper DeJean is closing in on being ready to play the nickel. So no offense to Vontae Maddox, but it's time to play the guy that you drafted for that very reason. But again, we cannot end that way, so in an attempt to leave you with some positivity, how about a quote from Merle Reese, reminding that this is the NFL and every week somebody gets knocked off. Did anyone think Minnesota would be this good? Or that Sam Darnold could play this well? And how about Baltimore, who started 0-2 but look like complete juggernauts now? Plus Buffalo, despite some blowout wins, got shown up in primetime against those same Ravens. I hear you, the Ravens aren't the Bucs, and there's still a dose of reality that there needs to be some major fixes internally for the Eagles. But guess what? The NFC East appears to be the NFC least this year. So even if the Eagles have some growing pains and go 10-7, that could win them the division. Who knows? Maybe I'm being too hopeful and too optimistic, but this is not rock bottom, and AJ and Smitty are complete game changers. Just saying, make a few moves on defense, and you've got another 13 games to get it figured out. But you guys let me know, what did I miss? What are your thoughts on this? The good, bad, ugly from everything else there, and until next time, this has been the Philly Special.